share screen?
Yeah, click on the share screen
Okay.
and it should pull up a screen that you're going to show us on your computer. There we go.
You got it?
We see your Lightroom. Yep.
Okay. Everybody can see it?
It's a little askew. You have more than one monitor up?
No. I got a full screen.
All right.
Oh, okay.
It's me.
How about now?
It looks like a real, like a little sliver. What does everybody else see? Maybe it's just me.
I see black right now.
Yeah, I just see a black, and then I
And
just see
it's a
like
real
the,
small, real narrow.
like the edge of your.
I don't. I'm full screen. I don't understand what's going on. I'm in Lightroom and I got it full screen.
Right. Dolphin, you got any ideas?
Yeah, you're probably not sharing the whole screen. Maybe share desktop. If you go back to share,
No, just a minute.
and you should have like desktop as one of the options.
I can't even get back to Zoom now.
Oh yeah, no, that's tricky now. Because
Stop share. Okay.
There
let's
we go.
try it.
yeah, you got it. And now start
Stop
share.
share.
And you
Okay,
should
share
have-
screen.
One of the options should be the desktop.
Pardon?
One of the options should be desktop.
Okay, desktop one.
Okay, and share.
Share.
Now we should be able to see the whole desktop. Now we see your whole desktop, okay?
Okay.
Be warned. We see your whole desktop.
There we go. Now we see your Lightroom. There we
now,
go.
yeah, now I can see it now.
Perfect.
It should be full screen now, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Looks good.
Okay, good
Looks
to go. Okay. Okay, tonight we're going on a little trip to South Africa. If you're a wildlife photographer, you have to at least once in your lifetime go to Africa. But be warned, it can be addictive. If you go once, you're going to want to go again. It's a big continent and there's a multitude of places to go. But I'm going to focus on South Africa because South Africa is my favorite place as far as wildlife sightings is concerned. I'm going to break it down into two phases. The initial part of the presentation is going to be on things you can do as far as planning to go. And the second part will be we'll actually go on a game drive and look at the critters that we'll see while we're there. One of the considerations that you always have to do is how you want to go. You want to go on solo, otherwise just an adventurous type of spirit where you go by yourself and just traveling, single, or on an organized photo tour. And there's actually advantages and disadvantages of both of them. Number one is money. The organized photo tours are always going to cost more than if you travel by yourself. Best example I can give you is I know a man that actually does organized tours at a lodge that I frequent. And he does a 9-day tour, which is 6 days in the lodge, actually 7 days, and then 3 days in a hotel. And everything is covered as far as game drives, his hotel fees, shuttles, and everything. And he charges $6,500 for that trip. You can do the same exact trip to the same places, using the same shuttles, staying in the same hotels, and staying in the same lodge for like a little over $4 grand. So there is a big price discrepancy as far as traveling solo versus photo tours. But there are advantages to a photo tour. Number one is itinerary. You don't have to worry about planning an itinerary because it's going to be set for you. But on the bad side, right, is that going solo is that your itinerary can never be set because of the daily turnover. The example is if you're on an organized photo tour and you see lions the first 2 days, well, maybe you won't chase lions the rest of the trip. You'll be looking for other animals. But if you're on a solo tour, because of people are leaving daily, new people are coming in every day, you may find yourself chasing just lions, 5 days out of 5. Another disadvantage to the solo tours is the seating on the game drives. The normal game vehicle will hold 10 passengers maximum. That's kind of crowded for photography work. And many a day on a solo tour, you may find yourself in a vehicle with 10 people. Whereas on the photo tours, you're normally limited to 2 people per aisle as far as the seating is concerned. And I'll show you pictures later on of how that works. And on the better tours, you'll actually have a whole row on the vehicle by yourself. And then there's the fact that if you're on an organized photo tour, you're traveling with fellow photographers who know the ins and outs about shooting together versus tourists. And tourists can be a pain, or they can be fun because it's meeting different people from different places. But you also might have an instance like I had on one tour where we had encountered a leopard with 2 cubs, and everybody was shooting it with their various type of cameras. And a big booming voice came from the back after about 5 minutes with these cubs. He said, "Next animal, please. We spent enough time here." And that was made our day there. We'll also find that as far as camera equipment that's being used on the photo tours, everybody has a long lens and a short lens, or 2 cameras, or at least entry-level equipment. Whereas on a solo tour, you'll be primarily going with tourists. And believe me when I say that 70% of the people in the vehicles in Africa that are not on a photo tour, organized photo tour, are shooting with cell phones.
Oh.
It's hard to believe that, but that is true.
Huh.
And that really affects the ranger's approach, right? Because as photographers, we're all going to have long lenses. And so we want to shoot from far away and then approach. But if he's got a vehicle full of tourists, he's going to drive right up on the animals so they get a good shot, which is not always the best thing that we do as fellow photographers. Another decision you have to make is whether you want to visit national parks or private reserves. And again, there's advantages and disadvantages of both of them. The national parks are larger than the private reserves as normally for most of them. An example is like Kruger. When we think of Africa, we always think of the Serengeti, which is a very large park that actually goes through 2 different countries. It's like 12,000 square miles. But Kruger, which is all in South Africa, is 7,500 square miles. It's a pretty good sized park. It's like 3 times the size of Yellowstone. One of the advantages of the national parks over the private reserves are the roads. You'll find that many of the roads are paved in the national parks. And even the gravel and dirt roads are normally in better condition than the private reserves. But one of the disadvantages is that on the national parks, you cannot go off the road. Even in a game vehicle, you must stay on the road. Whereas in the private reserves, if you see something nice, the driver, the guy, will actually go off road to get you a good distance from the animal. It's also very crowded in the national parks, particularly on weekends. As just like in Yellowstone, you can drive your private vehicle inside the national parks. So all the locals will be in the parks. Whereas in the private reserves, you have limited access. The only vehicles allowed on the wildlife roads are the game vehicles. And you have to be a guest to get in. So you have limited access. It never is crowded. So you don't have the car jams. If you've ever been to Yellowstone, you know what a bear jam is. It's where you got 50 vehicles shooting one bear or trying to see one bear, right? Then you have the same thing in the national parks in South Africa. If you stop for a sighting, within 5 or 10 minutes, you're going to have 30 to 40 vehicles backed up, crowding around trying to get the same shot you're getting. In the private reserves, that will never happen because they have rules about what they call crowd control, whereas the first vehicle that sees a sighting, it belongs to them for at least 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And then that vehicle can really decide how many more people can come up, which might be one or two more vehicles. And everybody just wastes their turn. Another consideration is what I call tour-ons, sort of a slang word for a moronic tourist. You will see people do the dumbest damn things in the world in a wildlife park. I've seen people actually get out of a vehicle to shoot with a cell phone within 30 feet of a lion.
Wow.
You will not see that on an organized photo tour. That will never happen. Another consideration is the rhinos. One of the saddest things in the world to see is a rhino that's had its horn sawed off. And in almost all the national parks, the rhinos have been dehorned. It's the only way to protect them from poachers. And also the private reserves tend to have better quality rangers. And by better quality, I don't mean they just really better quality. It's that they're more experienced. Because rangers have different degrees of knowledge based on their rank. And the higher ranking rangers you'll find are in the private reserves. And also the anti-poaching units are normally better in the private reserves too. So that's some considerations you should have before you even think about going, about what you want to do. Once you decided basically outline of where you want to go and what you want to do, it might want to consider where you want to go. In South Africa, you have two basic types of safaris. I call this glamping. These are like the budget safaris. And it's really like what it says, it's glamour camping. You'll normally have a few amenities, the primary one being a common area where you can dine and have a beer and meet and work on your photos with your laptops or whatever. But when it comes to sleeping and staying, you're going to be staying probably in a tent. And I've actually stayed in this lodge right here on two occasions. It's not your average tent. They are air conditioned and they do have a full bath. So they're not glamorous, but they're quite good.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. And you save a little bit of money, but they're not a whole lot cheaper than the other lodges.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 10 or 15% cheaper. That's all. They have a few amenities. They call this a swimming pool. I call it a oversized hot tub. And that's really about all you have, other than your tent, this, and your common area. Whereas the lodges are completely different. This is one of my lodges of choice. It's called Nadili. And lodges come in various sizes. This is a private lodge, by the way. But even on the national parks, they come in various sizes. Most of the lodges are configured to handle only 10 guests because that's the maximum you can put in a game vehicle. But there are plenty of lodges that handle a lot more of that. And some of the bigger ones can handle 100 guests.
Wow.
And I'll talk about that later on, right? This lodge here consists of, like you can see, 5 different little cottages in the main lodge, the common area. And this is the common area of the lodge I was staying in.
Nice.
It is nice. They have an indoor dining area. There's actually a bar over here, and there's plenty of room for all the guests. The outside area, we could go out on the deck, and one of the places one of the reasons I really love this lodge is you can sit on this deck, and as far as you can see in any direction, there is not another sign of civilization. And it has a few amenities too. That has a workout room and a swimming pool, but you do have to share that swimming pool with the locals. They tend to visit every once in a while.
I love it.
That's awesome.
One of the rooms, this is the room I stayed in, well appointed, plenty of room, do everything you want. Another view. And comes with a full bath, walk-in shower, and even a soaking tub if you want to take in the scenery while you have an afternoon soak. As far as food is concerned, it can go at different levels. If you go on a glamping trip, you'll probably find that most of your food is going to be made in what they call a bra, which is a South African barbecue. Don't be fooled. It was very good. And your dining will be basically rather rudimentary. Whereas in the lodges, the actual lodges, you'll find it's a little bit more upscale. And the meals are, you usually have an option of a game species like kudu or an ostrich, and then, or if you just want chicken or fish, you don't normally have two options every night as far as food is concerned. And it's usually like a multi-course meal. And it is really, really good too. They really baby you. When you get ready to pack, don't make my mistakes. This was my load the first time I went to Africa.
Oh my God.
Right? Because I didn't listen to anybody about it. I wanted to make sure I had what I needed, right? Let me explain here. This is the tripod that I never used. The only time I used that tripod was that initial shot you saw where I was making that roughing it shot. That's the only time I ever used that tripod. I never used the monopod. I took a long lens, in this case a 200, 500, a 70 to 200, and then a bunch of lenses for landscape. I never used these lenses, right? So on my next trip that I went, oh, by the way, and the binoculars too. I took binoculars, and I took them with me on the first two game drives. After that, I said to myself, I'm looking through a 500 millimeter lens. Why do I need binoculars? So I left them behind. On my next trip that I went, and every trip since then I've gone 4 times total, right? All I have is 2 bodies and 1, 2, 3 lenses. That's it. Plus my batteries and my cars, but 2 bodies and 3 lenses. A long lens, intermediate lens, and 1 lens for landscape. And I can tell you right now, 70% of the shots I took were with the 200 to 500. Maybe 30%, the other 30%, I should say 29%, were taken with the subject 200. I probably took less than a dozen shots with the 2470. And in reality, when you look at the landscape shots that will be coming on further in the presentation, most of those were shot with a 70 to 200. So travel light. And I also should mention laundry while you're at here, when I'm out packing, right? You don't have to overpack. You don't need 7 days worth of clothes. Every lodge that I've ever been to had daily laundry service that came with your stay. You leave your dirty clothes on the bed in the morning, and they're cleaned and folded and laying on your bed that evening. So all you need is like three changes of clothes. That's all you need to take, depending on the season, of course. As far as getting there, Africa is a long way away. The only direct flight to Johannesburg, which is the main base for game safaris in South Africa, is from Atlanta, and it's a 16-hour flight. It's a direct flight. And some people say that's just too long to stay on an airplane. Your only other options are going to put you on an airplane longer. Because all the other options take you to a European capital, which is an 8-hour flight. You have a 3 or 4 or 5-hour layover, and then you got another 11-hour, 12-hour flight to South Africa. The downside to this direct flight, this is the one I've flown every time, is the Delta flight to Johannesburg from Atlanta, is that you arrive late afternoon, which is going to be, you're too late to go to the lodge. So you're going to have to at least overnight 1 night in the hotel. But that's no problem, because every known hotel that you have in the United States, they have a facility in Johannesburg. My option, my favorite, is what they call Emperor's Palace, and I highly recommend this. If you go to Johannesburg, this is a gated, controlled, secure location, which is huge. It consists of a casino, a convention center, 5 different hotels, all the way from 2-star to 5-star, all reasonable as far as price is concerned. And best of all, it has its own indoor mall. 12 restaurants, 13 restaurants, I don't know, a whole bunch. And plenty of stores to take up your leisure time. But 1 day or 2 days, it's a great place to stay. Somewhere along this way, so if you're going on a photo tour, you're going to meet your tour operator. This is Jeff Clow. I've actually used him a couple of times, and I highly recommend it. If you're not going on a photo tour, you're going to run into your chief ranger or one of the rangers at least. And let me talk about the rangers right now. These guys, their depth of knowledge on wildlife and even botany in Africa is simply amazing. It's unbelievable what they know, how they can predict animal behavior and put you on the spot that you need to be. It's just, I'll have a few stories later on about how they surprised us on more than one occasion. Once you meet your ranger, he'll give you a briefing, and this is your normal day on safari at a lodge. You normally have 2 drain drives each day, other than the first and last day, because check-in and check-out is normally 12 o'clock. So you get an afternoon day. You'll only get an afternoon drive on your first day and a morning drive on your last day. Every other day, it's two drives a day. First light, you'll be up at the crack of dawn. They'll wake you up, and you'll go out in the vehicle, and you'll be out until like mid-morning, maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock on a game drive, because that's when the animals are active. You come back, you get a late breakfast, and then you have leisure time the rest of the day until about 2 o'clock when you have a light lunch. And then shortly thereafter, you go out on your afternoon game drive, and you'll stay out past sunset. Around sunset, or actually before sunset, the guide will actually find a nice, safe location where you can actually dismount the vehicles, and you sort of have like a evening soiree, you might want to call it. They'll have wine, beer, soft drinks, whatever you wish to drink, and a few snacks. And you sit there and enjoy the sunset, and then you drive back to the lodge in the dark, and then have time to clean up a little bit, and then it's dinner, and your day is over. And this is the same thing you do almost every day at the lodge. Just for your information, this boy here, that's an eland. That is the largest antelope in Africa. This is your typical vehicle for a South African tour. This is a photo tour right here. I've actually been on tour with all these people more than once, and you can see gets plenty of room as far as equipment, and to be able to take a shot on an animal on the left or the right side of the vehicle. And the vehicle is not crowded. This is normal for a photo tour to have 5, a maximum of 6 people in a vehicle. The only difference between a national park and a private reserve, you saw earlier on the private, this is a private reserve, open sides. In the national park, they're required to have a roof and side panels, but otherwise it's the same vehicle. This is a shot of me on a solo tour. This is a solo part of the tour that I take. That me and Mike actually went, me and the guy in the front seat here, we actually were going on a photo tour together, but we actually went a week ahead of time on our own to this lodge before joining up with that photo tour. And you can see, not crowded at all, right? But that wasn't every day, because some days you might be like this. This is one of the disadvantages to going solo, is you might end up in a vehicle that's this crowded, which makes it very difficult than handling a long lens. My advice is when you find yourself in a lodge and you're traveling solo and you know the lodge is almost full, is you get there early before the game drives take off. You be the first one there, and you ask the ranger to sit in the front seat right here. That's where I got most of my shots, right there. And I want you to notice, look, these are all tourists, right? Look at the equipment they're using. And that's going to dictate how this guy approaches the animals. Earlier, I said some of the lodges handle much more than 10 people, even up to 100 maybe. If you're going to go to a lodge that handles more than 10 people, or can handle more than 10 guests, which is the maximum you can put in one of these vehicles, always ask what kind of vehicle they're going to be using, because otherwise you may find yourself in this. And as a photographer, being 8 feet off the ground and having 25 other people in the vehicle with me is no way to enjoy a photo safari. And that's all as far as the preparation. Now we get to the actual photo safari. We're going to go on a game drive. Every lodge is going to push what they call the Big Five. The Big Five are like world, they come from the old hunting, back when they took trophies for hunting. But everybody wants the Big Five. And no matter who you are, at the top of your list of the animals that you want to see, if not number one, it'll be close to the top, is going to be the African lion. This is the first lion that I encountered in South Africa on my first visit. And let me tell you, it is hard to describe the feeling you have or you will have when you're up close and personal with a wild lion and you're sitting in a vehicle with no sides and no top. It's hard to describe that feeling. I was shooting this guy. He was walking toward us. I picked up a 70-200 because he was kind of close. And I started shooting. And click, 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 click. And then it dawned on me, hey, this guy, his head is filling the frame. And he's looking directly at me, you know. How close is he? I put the camera down, and he's pretty close. He's still coming toward me. But then he did what all lions do. He just sort of walked on by, gave us a glance, and kept on going. And if you want to see how close he is, this is right here. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and this right here is the rearview mirror, or the side mirror, if you want to call it. Another example of how close they get is right there. But in your initial briefing, they're going to give you 3 rules to go by as far as predators are concerned. And the way they explain it to us is that their vision is such that they don't really differentiate you from the vehicle. As far as they're concerned, you're part of the vehicle until you show them you're not. And every one of these lions and leopards and cheetahs and whatever, sometime in their life, they actually see these vehicles every day. But when they were younger, sometime in their life, they've come up to this vehicle and they've licked it, they bit it, they smelled it, and they know it's not edible. So they just ignore it. And that's exactly what they do. They ignore them. This girl didn't even look up at him. She just walked on by. Another instance, I'm in the front seat again. We stopped on this road, and all we were doing was watching the buffalo, waiting for him to cross the thing. And all of a sudden, right out, boom, this guy popped out right in front of us and walked on by without ever even looking at our vehicle. But there are times when you might get too close, and they will let you know when. This old girl said, back up, you're a little bit too close. And we took her advice. This is your normal line. This is what they call a flat line. This is where you'll see like probably 80% of your lines are going to be flat lines because they sleep 18 to 20 hours a day. When we approached this old boy, the only thing he did was open one eye for about a minute, and then he closed it. He never even moved his head, as he wasn't concerned about us at all. You'll see a lot of pictures with lions with their mouths agape. It's not a sign of aggression. They're not roaring. It's nothing but a yawn. 90% of the pictures you see with a lion with its mouth open are going to be with a yawn. They make for great photos, though. And then there's the one. This is the one that I call him the exception. We're always told that, they don't pay attention to us. And then you'll find the one that just stares at you intently. And you can see him running in his mind. Is this edible or not? This old boy gave me the evil eye, and until I was kind of uncomfortable. But he did nothing more than that. If you get lucky, you'll run into some cubs. I call this one the bold one. As we're driving down the road, and all the cubs were in the shadows, and as soon as we stopped, this one jumped out and went out in the road and just sort of confronted us like, this is my road. I call him the bold one. We were lucky as we ran into the same mother and the same cubs the next day. And she gave us about 30 or 40 minutes with them before she wandered off on a hunt or whatever. We don't know. They were gone. And that's all for the lions. My next one of the big five is going to be the rhinoceros. In South Africa, you have two species of rhinoceros. This is the white rhino. It is a grazer, as you can tell by the low-hanging neck and the square lips. And it's fairly common. I don't want to say it's endangered, but it's probably threatened, but it's fairly common. This one still has a horn, and it's actually in a national park too, but it still has its horn. Most of them are dehorned in the national park. The other species is the black rhino. This is a much rarer rhino. You kind of, and actually endangered, but it has a high head and it has prehensile lips because it's a browser. It eats leaves and twigs. And it's also one that's considered very aggressive. But in all my visits, I've seen tons of white rhinos. This is the only black rhino I've seen in all my visits to South Africa. One of my favorite rhino picks, I call this the Three Amigos. And then there's a couple of boys just doing mock battles, preparing for when they are adults. These are youngsters. And then it's siesta time. There's no cattle egrets in Africa, but they do have rhino egrets. Every rhino has an egret that follows him around. This old boy here has been in a battle. He's been wounded more than once, I guess, in dominance values. One with a baby, and then that one morning we had our little rhino roadblock for a while. This old boy insisted the road was his and wouldn't let us pass for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then there's always the mud. Rhinos love to get covered in mud to keep the insects from biting. And this one was having a blast. The Sabi River. This is shot with a 70 to 200, by the way. And the next animal out of the big five is the Cape buffalo, which many people consider the most dangerous animal in Africa. Notoriously short-tempered. This is a male. You can tell by what they call the boss. And the older the male is, the bigger this boss gets, the closer together they will grow. And you can see the difference between this one and the female. They always travel in big herds. You never see them alone. And there's always a bunch of males in a herd. It's not one like the typical African herd of different wildlife. There's usually only one dominant male. But African buffaloes seem like many males in a herd. You can see these are all oysters. Look at the size of the bosses of all these guys. And another, this is the dominant male out of that herd you just saw. And you can see that his boss has already grown all totally together. He's in his prime right now. And if you're lucky, you can see the really rare jackalope. This is a friend of mine that I've been on many a trip with. It's Jackie Good Miller, and she is a world-class photographer. The acacia tree. This is the primary food of the giraffes, believe it or not. The buds are real small because this is shot in the springtime and it's just starting to bud out. And then we have the third of our big five, which was the leopard. This is a big male, and leopard sightings are few and far between. out of the big five, this is the rarest this is the rarest of the animals to catch. And you're lucky to find one if you ever find one in the clear. On another trip, we found this one up in a tree, and it had already stashed its impala up in the tree with it. And the next day we went back, so he's still there. Because he had enough food for last for a week, so he wasn't going nowhere. We believe this was a female. On my first trip to South Africa, we never saw a leopard. We were looking and looking and looking, but never saw one until our very last game drive. And then we spotted this female in the brush. And it was in Kruger National Park. And we were only like a quarter of a mile, maybe a half mile inside the park from the entrance gate when we spotted her. And like I said earlier, within 10 minutes, we had 30 cars around us. But our guide actually sort of, I don't know, I say Greg Stevens was his name, I still remember. He put our vehicle in reverse and sort of threaded his way through that big mess and said, she's going to be in the clear over here. And sure enough, about a minute later, she was. But this is where the dangerous knowledge comes in. We're sitting there, we're shooting this leopard, we're having a great time. And our guide who says, oh shit, I know where he's going. We didn't know what he was talking about. And he just told us, hang on. And he puts the vehicle in reverse and he thread his way through the vehicles, right? And he's backing up down the road in the middle of nowhere and nobody there except us. And he said, he's going to that culvert down there. I know where he's going. Again, we didn't know what he was talking about. So we get there, we stop, parked, and he says, 3 o'clock. And there he was at 3 o'clock. And Greg was right because he slowly made his way and went in a culvert under the road right under our vehicle. For this picture, that leopard was no more than 10 feet away. The last of the big five are elephants. These, I don't know how to describe it. These became my favorite animal in all of Africa. If I was told I could only shoot one animal, it would be the elephant. This is the first shot I ever took of a wild elephant. And it's just I guess, I don't know what they're doing, bonding or whatever, right? But I don't know, there's something about elephants that really, I don't know, they grab my heart. This shot here, we were actually shooting a herd of elephants way off to the left. And I looked up, and this is my oh shit minute. And this road, there was nothing there. It was just I told myself, you know, I like the contrast between that red earth, that blue sky, and that green vegetation. So I took what they call a road shot. And as soon as I put my camera down, an elephant crossed at the crest of the hill. And this is what I say, oh shit. I told myself, I said, please, I raised my camera back up. I said, please let there be more. Please let there be more. And about another dozen passed by. And this is the shot I got that I love the most. This hangs on my wall, by the way. Earlier, I told you about Tourons. And here's what I'm talking about. This was taken in Pilanesberg National Park. And you can see the civilian vehicles, right? We drove up, and the tour elephant with 2 calves was completely encircled by private vehicles. And you could see she was getting agitated. I mean, you could tell by how she was moving that she was getting really upset. Our guide and a guide on another vehicle that came up behind us got out, walked up front, and told 2 or 3 of the vehicles to move because it was dangerous. And believe it or not, they argued with him, but they didn't move. And as soon as they made that gap, the tour elephant with the 2 calves just made a beeline out, right? And the thing is, she could topple any one of them cars without even breaking a sweat. But people don't think. They think it's a petting zoo. It just amazes you sometimes. This is another time we actually stopped at this lake because it had a bird hide and was famous for its birds. And as soon as we got there, the elephants came in, digging the mud off the bottom to plaster themselves to keep the insects away. I love watching elephants. This is another ranger story. This is Liesel, and they do have female rangers, by the way. We were shooting, I don't know, zebras and giraffes or whatever. And one of the people in the vehicle with us said, "Are those elephants over there?" And way off in the distance, coming down the mountainside, you could see a herd of elephants. And Lisa said, "Yes." She says, "Do you guys want to go over there?" And we said, "Oh yeah, of course." Right. So it's going to take about 20 minutes. And so we started going down the road, and we come to a fork in the road, and the road to the left was leading down to where the elephants were, and the road to the right was going to another direction. So naturally, she goes to the right. But by this time, we've already learned not to question the rangers. Now, about 10 or 15 minutes down the road, she pulls off the road, goes in, getting cross country, and stops in a clearance and says, "Patience. Remember the 3 rules. No loud noises, don't stand up, no sudden movements." And sure enough, about 5 minutes later, a whole herd of about 50 elephants arrived and surrounded our vehicles. And we were in the middle of an elephant herd for a good 40, 45 minutes. And that was just the most unbelievable moment that I had on any safari. It's hard to describe how they interact with each other. They just play, play, play. On another day, we saw this bull. And as soon as he saw us, he made a beeline to us. The ranger told us, "Don't worry, he's just curious." And sure enough, that's exactly what he was. He came right up to the front of the vehicle and actually even nudged the vehicle a little bit. And then walked over to the side like he was going to greet the ranger. And got so close that the ranger that was sitting to my right actually almost climbed in my lap because he didn't want to accidentally get stabbed with that big tusk because it was almost inside the vehicle. And that is not the only occurrence, but many a time we actually had curious elephants approach right up to the vehicle. It's happened quite a few times. Another picture of the Sabi River. And this is not the Big Five anymore, but many consider this also one of the most dangerous animals in Africa. And actually, there are more people. The only animal that kills more people in Africa than the hippo is the crocodile. They are very aggressive, very territorial, and very dangerous. But they look so, I don't know how you call it. They look almost harmless, but out of the water, but they are not. I've been talking about all the big 4-legged critters, but one thing South Africa has in abundance is colorful birds. And this is the most colorful of the bunch. This is called a lilac-breasted roller. Very skittish, hard to get a photograph of, but you'll see them every day. They're fairly common. They are so beautiful and so colorful. Oh. One of the things that surprised me about South Africa when I first visited was I always had this thought that anywhere in Africa you go, there would be all different kinds of monkeys and they'd be all over the place. But the fact of the matter is, South Africa only has 2 species of monkeys. This is a tree-dwelling monkey called a vervet. Another vervet, and another vervet. Various colors, but all the same species. And the other species is the Chakma baboon. This is a big male of a troop, and they're fairly common. I think we saw troops of baboons almost every day we were on safari. But they're quite scenic and very protective of their young. I've always liked this photo because I can almost hear him saying, "It wasn't me, I didn't do it." And then you have the teenagers having a little spat. And then there's mommy daycare. We saw leopards and lions, which were probably the 2 biggest predators in South Africa, but there's a whole bunch of other predators. This is the most successful hunter in Africa. It's called an African wild dog. Some people call it an African painted dog. And the fact of the matter is, whereas lions and leopards are only successful in their hunts about 20 to 30% of the time, wild dogs are successful at least 80% of the time. 80% of every hunt ends up in a kill. And it can be quite gruesome, but it's also the circle of life. It's just the way it is. Wild dogs are actually endangered, and they're actually declining in numbers. They're actually quite a rare sight. Then you have the Nile crocodile, and I have to confess that I have never got a good shot of a crocodile. Still on my bucket list. You had the big cats, but you also have a bunch of small cats that are wild. This is called a serval. Very seldom seen, kind of rare. And this old boy was only out there for like maybe less than a minute. And then there's the infamous hyena. Most people consider them a scavenger. And they will take advantage and scavenge anything they can. But in reality, they're a much more successful hunter than even the lions are. All the hyena packs are bossed by a female, an alpha female. And this is what, so this old lady right here is putting a little bit of discipline on something. I guess somebody broke one of the rules. A couple of hyena pups. Another advantage to a photo tour over a solo tour. This shot right here I was on a photo tour, and we actually staked this den out for a good 40 minutes before the pups appeared. That would never happen on a solo tour. Another predator, this is a black-backed jackal. There are 2 species of jackal in South Africa. This is a female with 2 second-year pups. And the same family again. The black-backed jackal and the other species, which is much less common. The blackback is pretty common, but the side-striped jackal is not very common at all. But he is so well camouflaged, you probably pass by without seeing him half the time. Some of the predators are winged. This is a brown snake eagle. And as the name implies, their primary diet is snakes. This is a fish eagle. And just like it says, their primary diet is fish. One of the things I love about the Waterberg area of South Africa is the terrain. The savannas are nice. And, you know, the horizon to horizon spaciousness of the savannas is very photogenic. but I love the mountainous regions of the Waterberg region. And here we go. The cheetah is not one of the big five, but I don't know how to say it. Out of the big cats, the cheetah is my favorite. This is on the first. This is the first shot I've ever took of a cheetah on a game drive in South Africa, and there were two brothers that we were shooting, and I got they gave me a couple of shots for a big 15, 20 minutes before they started to walk away. And as soon as they started to walk away, the driver, my guide, just took off. Didn't say nothing. And I was a little bit irked because this is my first day on my first game drive. I was a bit irked because I said, I was shooting this thing, I think that's what I'm thinking. And he drove down the road about 100 yards, 200 yards, and he parked and stopped. And he said, look at that bush right there. They're going to come out right there. Get ready. And they did. And that was my first introduction to how well these rangers understood animal behavior. He pointed to the exact spot the cheetah would come out because he knew where the game trails were. If you're lucky, you might even catch a couple of cubs. But cheetahs keep their cubs very well hidden because everything else will kill them. Hyenas will kill them, lions will kill them, leopards will kill them. So this is probably one of the best shots you're going to get of a cheetah cub. It's always going to be a little bit of brush around. Unless you have a really good ranger who knows where they're going to go, where they're going to stop, and he puts you in a position to give you something like this. Oh, another African sunset. And then we have the other animals. We've been focusing on the animals that are the eaters. Now we're going to see it on the animals that are trying not to be eaten. This is African bacon, the warthog. A female, when I said so ugly, only her mother would love her. This is a female. This is a male. You can tell by I guess you call them warts. Another female. And another male taking a good soak in the bud. And then there's the birds again. This is a yellow masked weaver. And it builds weaves these nests right here. And it's an interesting bird because what I've been told is two different stories by two different rangers. It takes them about 5 days to a week to build this nest. Once they're finished, they'll fly off to a close by limb and they'll sing until they attract a female. And then with the female, will come and inspect the nest. And I've been told two different stories. I've been told that if the female doesn't like the nest, she will tear it up and fly away. And I've also been told that the female may inspect the nest and fly away, but if she doesn't stay, the male will actually tear the nest apart and then rebuild it. And they say on average, these males will build 5 to 8 nests each season before they attract a mate. Among the many really pretty birds are the bee eaters. There's I think there's like a half a dozen different species of bee eaters in South Africa. This is called the little bee eater. So colorful. This is called a swallow-tailed bee eater. And then a white-cheeked bee eater. I think it's white-fronted bee eater. White-fronted bee eater. This is a brown-hooded kingfisher. And then the next one is one of the most colorful birds you'll find. This is a Malachite kingfisher. To give you to give you an idea of the size of this bird, that limb that he's sitting on, it's about as big and round as your little finger. Oh, the African paradise flycatcher. If you're a birder, South Africa make you happy. Not too colorful, but interesting to me is the long-tailed shrike. And then back to the critters. Anytime you see a bunch of giraffes out in the open, you're going to find other animals near, because they like to use the giraffes for their early warning system. This is a couple of males, this is a couple of young males. They're practicing their neck battles that they'll do when they fight for dominance once they reach maturity. And a female giving us the evil eye as far as curiosity about what you guys doing. And this is when they're most susceptible to being attacked, is when they're drinking. The old zebra. I call them zebras, but if you go to South Africa, you're going to hear zebra anywhere in Africa. They call them zebra. Good baby. They make for great black and whites. This stallion actually challenged us. He was I don't know, I guess he thought our vehicle was going to take off one of his girls. I don't know. A youngster. And another youngster. In line, heading for the water hole. There's a large, there are some large ground birds in South Africa. This is I'm trying to think of it, a southern ground hornbill. And it's about the size of a turkey. Spends most of its time walking. Now, they do fly. They do fly because they roost in trees overnight. But they spend most of their time on the ground searching for food. It is also the biggest hornbill in Africa. This is one of the common hornbills. It's a yellow-beaked hornbill. And it's a pretty common bird. You'll see these every day. Another view. And then we come to the antelope. This is the McDonald's of South Africa. Actually, it's the McDonald's of every country in Africa. This is an impala. It's the most common antelope, and they travel in pretty large hills, right? And they're called a McDonald's. And I never got a good shot of it because in the back they have a hairline that looks like an M on their butts. When you see them running away, it looks like an M, one running away from you. And they're one of the most common prey species in all of Africa. But they're also very photogenic. But only the males have horns. It's a young one. And this is what they call a water buck, another large antelope. I love the target on his butt. That's what you're going to see when he's running away. This is an older male, but he's pretty good size. And another one, beautiful animal. And then there's the oxpeckers, another bird. This is a red-billed oxpecker, right? These are commonly thought of as being just great little birds because they eat all the ticks and everything off them. But the downside is, one thing they also do is they will actually keep wounds open because they want to drink the blood. So there's a good side and a bad side to them. It's debatable which one is the better side. And they can be they can be bothersome. If you count on this giraffe, there's 12 of them that can be seen in this one little photograph right here. Just going to town looking for ticks or any other parasites on that giraffe. Well, self-explanatory, the owl ostrich. They can be a little bit dangerous if they get too close because they can cause some damage with that beak. the national antelope of South Africa, the gemsbuck. And you can see she got her baby hid away. That's not snow you see in the background. That's actually flying insects. This is a Nyala. It's kind of a much rarer antelope, but always seems to be hiding in the brush. Hard to get a good shot of one of these. My cutie, called a steenbuck. This is about the size, excuse me, about the size of a German Shepherd. Not a lot, smaller in bulk, but as far as height, about the size of a German Shepherd. And then another small antelope, the Klipspringer. Interesting, their hair is like hollow. It's almost like a hedgehog, but it's not stiff like a hedgehog. It's still very pliable. One crossing the road, you see a good, it's just a scale about how big they are. And then a bushbuck. That was what you saw earlier when you saw the wild dogs. That was a bushbuck they had. What they call a red hartebeest. This is a medium-sized antelope, usually found on the open savannas. And then another one, the ground birds. This is a coy bustard. And this is a ground, they do fly, but they're basically ground birds. This one I think is a bustard, but I've never been able to identify exactly what it is. And this is a more colorful bustard called a Denham's bustard. And the same bird, another Denham's bustard. And then my favorite of the antelope, the kudu. I love those spirally horns. This was actually shot from the veranda of my cabin or my cottage in the lodge. Another example of the spiral horns. And the red ears. The ears, the ears are a dead giveaway, the red ears. This was the first shot that I actually took on my first trip to South Africa. I went to a private lodge for 5 days before I actually joined up with my photo group. And I just been dropped off at the gate. And one of the rangers that picked me up were shuttling me back to the lodge. And we were driving, and this kudu jumped out we almost hit it. He jumped out right in front of us. And I was just happy to get the shot without messing it up. Another example of the Tourons that you might meet, where this white car is parked right now, that's where our vehicle was parked. And we could see this kudu coming up the hill, because there were like three lines in the distance coming his way. He wanted to get out of there. So our driver stood up and motioned for these cars behind us, stay back, stay back, stay back. And then we moved forward to let the kudu by. And as soon as we moved forward, they moved forward to close the gap. So but the kudu had a choice, either jump or stay. And there's lions coming, so he jumped. And the interesting part is his hoof knocked out the back window of that one car, which was probably well deserved. Another kudu is standing in a little bit of shade that he can get. This is a late afternoon, and it was kind of hot. And another one with a nice double spiral. This is where you see most of them are pretty much in the brush all the time. And the sun is setting in South Africa, and it's also setting on me. And that's all, folks. That's all she wrote. Hello?
Oh, that was
Anybody-
awesome. Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute.
I
So-
thought
so
I put
you-
everybody to sleep.
You've been there 4 times?
South Africa, yes.
Wow. That's
And I,
amazing.
and I plan on going back, I hope.
Wow.
Incredible, James.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's amazing.
Now, James, a question. Most of these shots, I guess you are on burst mode, shooting as much as you can.
Almost always. Not always, but almost always. I don't want to say all the photos you saw were in burst mode. My camera always stays in burst mode, right? I have a certain set of settings I have as far as shutter speed, ISO, and things, until I see an animal. And then if I have time, I will go back to single shot. But if you won't have time most of the time.
Is there online, I guess you can do Google and find tours and so forth on how to take care of, do all this?
Yeah, oh yeah. I can make a couple of recommendations you want. But
If you could send us a couple links, I can post it on the website and share it on,
Yeah.
or you can share it on
well,
our Facebook.
the one guy that I showed you the picture of, he does tours, and I recommend it because I've been with him twice, and he's a little bit cheap. He's probably about 20% cheaper than the norm for most of the tours, and because the tours can get expensive. When I go, I usually do what I call a combo. Right? Even the first time I went, I did this. I signed up for a tour, and with Jeff, right? But I thought the first time I went that would be the only time I would go. So I said, if I'm going to go for more than a week. So I actually went like 5 days early, and I researched and I found a lodge to go to, and I went on my own, right? And a lot of the shots that you saw were when I was on a solo tour. And then 5 days later, I hooked up with the photo group when they came in, right? And the interesting part about it is that the lodge that I went to on my own is the lodge that I introduced Jeff to the next time I went, and that's where he takes his tours now.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, I could certainly get used to
You
laying
can do it
back
on your own.
and the cabin and just kind of chilling and oh look, there's an elephant.
Oh, let me tell you. The lodges, even the glamping, right? With the lodges, they will spoil you. I mean, they take this. You cannot believe how good a care that they take of you.
Well, I would
But
imagine for the money.
Huh?
For the money you spend, yeah, you hope so.
Yeah. Well,
Now-
usually everything but liquor is usually included. Your food's already included, your laundry's already included. So as long as you don't drink a whole, 2 gallons of beer every night, you're okay. And even that's pretty good. So even the first time I went, I probably drank 3 beers a day, and when I got finished, my extra bill was only like $40.
Wow.
Wasn't nothing.
James, have you only been to South Africa in that continent, or have you been to other countries?
No. I've been to Africa 7 times.
Wow.
Whoa.
I've been to let me say like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 countries,
Damn.
but not as a photographer, right?
So out of
Most of that,
out of the places that you've been, South Africa is the one you enjoy the most?
it's South Africa, yeah. Tanzania and the Masai Mara in Kenya are, that's where you always see the big, what do you call the big savannas, right? And where they have the big super migration. You won't see herds of 1 million wildebeest in South Africa because the terrain is different, the vegetation is different, right? It's not a grassland, right? If you want to see that, you got to go to Tanzania. But to me, you're closer to the animals. I've been to Tanzania, and it was good. Don't get me wrong, it was good, but it was different, and everything was always distant.
Very cool.
James,
Does anybody have any questions? You can hop
Yes.
up and say something.
yeah.
Pardon?
That picture of the elephants by the pool in the lodge, is there any chance that the lions can approach there?
Oh, actually, the lodge has that lodge right there that I showed you, it has a picture of the lion sitting on the deck where those guys were sitting.
I mean, how dangerous can be?
No, well, the thing is, at nighttime, they tell you, once you go to your cabin at night, the rangers will always escort you to your cabin if it's dark. Once you go to your cabin at night, they tell you don't come out until we come to get you in the morning.
So
Because
there's no chance for me to do a.
this particular lodge, right, is out in the open, right? Most lodges will have an electric fence around them
Okay.
to keep all the animals out. Like the one with the tent camp I showed you, that had an electric fence around it.
So there's a small chance for.
It will keep elephants out.
So there's a small chance to do night photography there.
Yeah, I did night photography off my veranda because of the way it depends on where you go. The lodge I showed you, the cottages, they had a veranda, and the veranda was like on a cliff. You know, if you walked off the end of it, you fell down 50 feet. So you didn't have to worry about a lion coming up.
Right.
But not all of them, you know, depends on where you go is what I'm saying.
Right.
But if you like shooting wildlife, I'm not saying you got to go to South Africa. You need to go to Africa at least once.
For sure.
But like I said, if you go once, you'll want to go again.
That's pretty much true for any place you go, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's amazing.
Any-
Anybody else have
anybody-
anything? Any questions?
Yeah, I would love if he would send the link of, some recommendation to places and stuff like that.
James, I had a question. How safe is South Africa? I'm talking about human safe.
You're not going to wander around and do street photography. Okay.
No. Okay.
That ain't going to happen. But I don't know how to say it. South Africa has about 32% unemployment.
Wow.
And you're walking around, $1,000 cameras, right? They're going to have it. I've never had a problem, but I've always been very careful about where I went, and I always had somebody with me that was either a guide, a tour guide, or somebody, right? That I knew where to go. I've got, but otherwise, I don't know how to say it. It's a very, out of all of Africa, South Africa is the most developed. And in some areas, you'll think you're in downtown Chicago or downtown Miami. And then in other places, you'll think you're in a ghetto in Rio de Janeiro or something. Like cardboard houses and everything.
Right.
But like I say, I never had a problem.
So you're safer with the animals than with people. That's what you're saying.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. And like I say, the hotel I recommended, I've stayed in other hotels. They're all the big hotels are gated and secure with security.
All right.
I would imagine they want to protect their visitors because that's a lot.
Oh yeah.
A lot of money
Yeah,
coming in.
Right.
Yeah, they don't. Tourists are that's their lifeblood.
Yeah.
It's tourism.
And usually, how long do you stay in South Africa or any other place that you go? I mean, your tours are how long they are?
Every time that I've gone, except one, right? I've gone on a photo tour, and I've also had like 4 to 5 days of solo tour up front before the photo tour. And I try to find a different place to go. Every time I do a solo tour, I try to find a different place.
All right.
James, I kind of tuned in very, very late.
but from what I can see, these are incredible pictures. So I'm hoping that maybe I can watch the replay.
Oh
or
yeah,
if it's available. Okay. 'Cause,
absolutely.
I mean, from what I'm seeing here, I mean, I'm seeing these pictures of all these animals, and then I'm looking off to the side, and I see a picture of Oscar, and I'm thinking, is there a difference there? No. No, Oscar, you look great. No, no, James, these are incredible pictures, seriously, and
Thank you.
I would love to be able to go out there one day.
Incredible
Absolutely.
presentation, James.
We need someone to win the lottery for us, right? So we can all go.
Right?
Yeah,
You know,
right.
it's not, you know, it's not cheap,
No,
right?
no.
By any means, right? But it's not as expensive as most people think it is.
That's true. I guess if you could probably be budget on some things.
The only thing that I would advise against is how do you put it? Traveling solo has its ups and downs, right? Going on a photo tour has its ups and downs. But I wouldn't really recommend going on an organized tour that wasn't a photo tour,
Right.
because they're going to cram as many people as they can together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would assume so.
So that's the only thing. But
Yeah,
I know
that's the thing with the photo tours. It's like a workshop, and when you get in there, you're basically paying for a lot of the people that are the instructors. But then when you're in a place like this, well, you can probably do this all on your own. But someone that's never been there, I probably wouldn't recommend doing it on your own. Or is it easy?
I'll be quite frank with you. I got just as many good pictures when I was on my own as I have on photo tours.
Even from the beginning, the first time you went, because if nobody's ever been there.
Even the first time I went.
Wow.
Even the first time. Matter of fact, some of my best ones have been by myself. Thing is, on the photo tour is you're actually paying the organizer of the photo tour, right? Basically has to put all the money up front, and that's where this thing come in. They reserve the lodge, and for an example, when Jeff reserves a lodge where he goes, he has to pay for an extra vehicle.
Oh.
Right? Because normally the lodge is only allocated one vehicle, because they can handle 10 people in the vehicle if the lodge is full. But with photographers, you don't want to put 10 photographers in one vehicle.
Right.
So they actually have to pay another lodge to use one of their vehicles for that week, right? So that's an extra expense. And the other thing is they have what they call dead days. That's the day before the lodge and the day after, the day before the trip and the day after the trip. Because we're booking the whole lodge, is they'll never fill the whole lodge again in one day. So he has to pay for 3 rooms extra on those 2 dead days.
Wow.
To make up for their lost revenue because of the fact that we had the lodge to ourselves.
Gotcha.
Normally they depend on people, a turnover every day. So he has extra expenses, but he still has a very good profit margin on those tours.
So when you book a photo tour, then he takes care of everything, or he's just the guy that takes you out taking pictures?
No, on Jeff, the 2 different tour guys, the two different tour operators I've had, either actually flew with, one of them met us at the airport because he lives in South Africa, and the other one, like Jeff, flew with us on a plane. He's going with us, right? Except when I went early, and they normally meet you at the airport, and from the time you get off the plane in the airport to the time you get back at the airport to get on the plane to leave, they've taken care of all the transportation, all the lodging, right? And in Jeff's case, most of the food. And the only thing you're paying for is your booze.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very good.
That's good.
Anybody else have anything to add? Any questions?
Do you recommend to insure your equipment before going there?
My equipment's always insured,
Okay.
but I would recommend it. Yeah. I've never had a problem, and I don't know anybody that did.
but it's always good to have it insured. Okay.
James, what would you recommend would be a photo tour is how many days to go to South Africa? A week?
Oscar, I'll be honest with you. I don't care how long you want to go. You want to stay longer.
What's the best time of the year to
The
go
first
do something
one I
like
took
this?
was, oh, good God, 7, 8, 9, was 14 days. Yeah, and I still wanted to stay.
14
And the
days.
shortest one I've gone is 9 days.
Okay.
What's the best time of the year to go do something like this?
You know, the thing you have to remember is you're in the southern hemisphere, and it's exactly the opposite as far as seasons are concerned. So, if you go if you go in March here, you know it's like the end of winter. That's September. It's like September in South Africa. That's the end of fall. So they have a rainy season, and I would say you don't want to go in the rainy season. That's the basic thing. I've gone in October. I've gone in August. I've gone in December, and I've gone in April. And I never had a problem with wet weather on any of those dates.
This is probably a really stupid question, but you say, okay, let's say you do like a 9-day tour. Now, are you with the same 10 photographers for those 9 days?
If you're on a photo tour, yes.
Okay.
So
it's best to go maybe to get some people together that you know and that you like.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I've been, I don't know, I've been doing tours with this one group of people for like 10, 12 years now, right? So we get together like once a year to visit somewhere. So I'm usually going with the same people every time.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
You know.
Cool.
Maybe we just get
I think our next trip is Botswana, though.
maybe we get our group together and just go as one.
Yeah.
That'll be an undertaking, man.
As long as I don't have to share a tent.
I don't think that the negativity is due to the lack of wanting to go. It's the lack of the money.
Yeah, it can put a dent. It can put a dent in your wallet.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I had a friend that went, not to South Africa. I don't know where he flew into, but he went to where all those orange desert. Oh God, I don't know what the hell it's called.
Namibia.
Namibia? Is that Namibia? Yeah.
Namibia.
Yeah. And then
Still on
he,
my bucket list.
yeah, and then he went up into the Drakensberg and did a hiking photo tour, and he told me he was like almost 20 grand, and I was like, holy shit.
No, I couldn't spend that kind of money.
No.
Namibia and Botswana actually control the amount of tourists that come in.
Mm.
So they're always, you always pay a premium to
Oh,
visit Namibia and Botswana because they really control how much. They don't want to get overloaded like Disney. You know what I mean?
right. That's interesting. Cool.
Mm.
All right.
So
Well,
right now, the South African rand versus the U.S. dollar is 25% better than when the last time I went.
wow.
When I went last time, it was 15 rand to the dollar. I checked yesterday; it's 20 rand to the dollar, which makes everything cheaper.
Yeah.
But it's still an experience.
Thank you so much again, James. This was really an eye opener.
Yeah.
Great job.
Do you want to go ahead and unshare your screen, James, and then we can get back to the normal.
Oh, I don't know how to. Oh, I didn't even know you're still sharing.
Go,
Oh,
yeah.
there it is.
Go into share. There you go.
I'm sorry.
That's
I didn't
okay.
even know-
No, we
I
were all
didn't- I
looking
didn't
at.
know-
We were all peeking at your Lightroom grid. No, that was very, very good. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for doing this.
awesome.
Oh,
You
you're
know,
welcome.
um,
I can't
last
help
week
but
I
talk
did the
about
one.
Africa.
He did this. If anybody else would like to, do a talk about their own photos, just let me know. Send me an email, and we'll definitely put some room on our schedule for you. And I think it helps everybody. It's one thing to see something on Facebook or on Instagram, but when you hear someone talk about it, like James did and like I did last month, you kind of get a feel. You get more of the story. You get a little bit, kind of like the how and the why and what this is and what that is, not just scrolling through on a phone because you're half asleep and you woke up to go to the bathroom or something in the middle of the night. So good.
It was an excellent meeting. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I did
Me
too.
too. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to turn the recording off, and then we can all just
Okay.
chat if you want. Where's the recording button? Oh, for God's sake. There it is.